that we would have to pay to buy into that unit for the life of that unit. So, you know, these are major undertakings that we're talking about here. And so that's why we're going to recommend that we get involved with KMEA and let them pursue these options for us. And maybe we can talk a little bit about, is that the end of it? Well, here's the energy in 2019, where we need to get our energy from. GRDA is still available. We need to get some from the intermediate portfolio, some from the baseload portfolio, and some from the market. The 17% would come from the market, the baseload would come from a coal plant or some sort of baseload resource, and the intermediate would come from some combined cycle unit or some gas-fired unit. This was their original approach back in October. They had a change of heart a little bit in the meeting yesterday that they're going to kind of move to this short-term approach now instead of trying to tie down life of the unit contracts.
If KMEA is looking at it from a shorter time period, then are the companies building the units going to want
These
more
are all
for their
built. These units are all built already.
Oh, okay.
These are all units that are operating and running right now.
Okay.
Now Dogwood though is they do not do short-term agreement. They want you to buy into it. You got to buy it for the life of the unit. So it may not be a viable option for us if we are only looking at a 5 to 7 year window. And the logic there is that the GRDA goes away in 2026. If we could bridge to 2026, we would have a chunk, 25 megawatts, we'd be out in the market for, not just the 7 or 8, or trying to tie down a lot today that meets that GRDA load going forward. So I think that's it on that. So I guess what we're asking you guys tonight is to let Dave go to the council with the requisite documents and recommend a mix. We suggested 10 megawatts of some sort of intermediate resource for 5 to 7 years and 2 megawatts of wind generation, and those are 20-year purchase power agreements. So that would be the what we'd asked them to study. Would be those two items, 12 megawatts total.
Keep in mind, the wind, you're not getting the capacity.
That's right.
That's what you're looking at here.
Right. You're only getting about 30 or 35%. 8. They've changed it. They said yesterday that.
I think with the new market.
The new market is coming up a different number now.
Really?
Yeah, they said they're getting up to 40-50% capacity out of these units with the new market. Yeah, I don't understand it either. So.
I don't know why that would change.
It threw me. Of course, the last time I was involved in this, you had to have your own capacity, and then we got to where the EMP was basically self-contained. Well, now that's off the table, and it's now the Southwest Power Pool is the unit that's addressed. And so apparently I said, well, don't you have to have equal gas-fired units to match your
wind generation?
And they said, no, you really don't have to, because if your wind drops off over here, they'll bring something up over there.
Yeah, the regulation, they said the regulation, it has to be done no matter what the resource is. And so they're saying, even though the regulation is and you buy into the market to provide regulation services. So people are providing resources into the system to back up wind generation. And so they will regulate that wind generation, and that provides them the ability to use more capacity for the wind generation, is the way I understand the way the market looks at it, because they have regulation that backs up the wind generation. And people are selling that regulation into the market that backs up wind. And so he said they're getting 50% on energy, but only about, SPP only looks at it as 30% for accreditation purposes, is what was discussed yesterday. But, so anyway, that was going to be our recommendation.
What is your recommendation again?
2 megawatts of wind generation, and that's a 20-year purchase power agreement. And the date it starts is flexible, depending on who else. They need to have at least 5 cities do 2. They need a 10 megawatt agreement with the company. And so, depending on what other cities do, would depend on when it would start. But basically, it's a 20-year purchase power agreement for 2 megawatts of wind generation. And then the other would be a 10 megawatt intermediate resource that would try to match up with what we're currently doing with OPPD, so that we have 10 megawatts for capacity purposes, because we meet our system capacity responsibility. But I asked them, I said, but don't we have to match up schedule? You don't do that anymore. It's injection into the system and withdrawals out of the system. And it doesn't matter, they inject, and Dogwood, if we own 10 megawatts of Dogwood, for example, the way it was explained to me is that the only way Dogwood would run if it was in the money. If the market was saying.
SPP would call them.
SPP would call them if their cost, everybody submitted their cost profile to SPP. Every unit in the footprint, they know exactly their cost. And when it comes time to bring on a unit, they call the next cheapest unit in the dispatch stack. And if Dogwood is the cheapest unit to bring on, they will sell that into the market and they'll bring it on. Doesn't matter about us, not serving us, it's serving SPP. And so I tried to get my hands around that a little bit. I said, so we don't have to schedule anymore. And he goes, well, we schedule our resources into the market. That's all we do. We schedule our resources into the market. And so anyway, that's the issue now.
Everything you're saying, I agree with, but I'm confused. Oh, the letter where you picked your different resources.
Mm-hmm.
That's a red flag for me, so I want to know what your thought was on that. Now, what you said, I don't disagree, but I want some clarification. Are we getting into picking these resources? What do you think entails intermediate?
Well, they're picking the intermediate resource. They've come to us with.
So this check mark on all the different resources, this is not real, this is not necessary. Basically, nuclear, coal, natural gas, wind.
Okay, they gave us a sheet of paper, indicative sheet that provided some dollar costs for each of those resources. And they didn't identify those resources as intermediate base. Obviously, coal was base load and nuclear was base load.
Well, that's what I want to clarify.
Okay, that cost structure.
Okay, so we're not looking at those because we're looking at intermediate.
That's correct.
Because I'm hearing stories of people having a misunderstanding of things.
Okay.
So we're on the same page.
Yeah, the coal and the nuclear are the base load resources. Then they have a natural gas opportunity is what they call it, resource. And that's the Dogwood resource. Then they have wind resource, and then they have reciprocating engine plant that is an option. Those are the options that they have. And they provided us some numbers to do our analysis on, but to me, it's based on $5.50 gas, and the heat rate's at 7.5. So,
Well,
I mean, natural gas units.
Because I agree, nuclear coal is a base load resource, not an intermediate.
Right.
And if that's clear with KMEA, then I'm cool with that.
Yep, that's why they put those two in there.
Okay, but when we're talking about base load, I don't have interest in coal because of the greenhouse
Problems.
gases.
Oh, I agree.
No matter how, I know what these units are, so this is newest technology, but it still ain't worth going that way with the uncertainty with.
I don't like to be exposed.
Greenhouse gases just isn't going away.
Look what happened in Yemen. I mean, Lacine, $250 million.
Well, that's why OPPD is shutting there.
Lacine, they spent
Sure did.
$1.2 billion retrofitting Lacine power plant. Half of it paid by KCPL, half of it by Westar, just to meet the emission standards that they've come up with. The units didn't cost us maybe $500 million to build them. So, anyway.
So you're asking for the 10 because we need the 7 intermediate and 4 base load in 2019. And then the 2 for the wind, so we'll have just a little bit of cushion over that 11.
Just to handle the growth.
That's what I was wondering, if that was including the 1%.
Yeah, that's the growth in the system.
This study will give us the parameters we won't be committed. The only thing we're committing to at this point is to pay for our piece of the study and to pay for the transmission study to get it here.
That's right.
As far as actually buying anything, we're not required to.
Oh, that comes back. That comes back for discussion.
So.
Especially with transmission, how long is it gonna take to get?
Well, they gave us 5 months is what they suggested.
Well, I'm talking about if they have to build construction.
Oh, if they have to do it,
upgrades
yeah,
and all
right.
that.
He said the study takes about 5 months.
Yeah, but I'm talking about upgrading.